The cold darkness of space pressed against the viewport of Lieutenant Rose's scout ship as she carefully navigated through the asteroid belt. Her purple-tinted hands moved smoothly across the controls, the bioluminescent spots on her skin providing just enough light to see the ship's interior. As one of the Brightcrest's most skilled scouts, she had completed dozens of missions like this before: observe the human colonies, gather intelligence, and return home without being detected. But something felt different this time. The humans had improved their detection systems far more quickly than anyone had expected. Rose's first warning came when her ship's sensors detected an energy spike. Before she could react, a massive human vessel emerged from behind a large asteroid, its dark hull blending perfectly with the space around it. Impossible, she whispered to herself. The Brightcrest High Command had assured everyone that humans were primitive creatures, barely able to manage interstellar travel. Yet here was a ship that had completely masked its presence from her advanced sensors. The human ship's communication system crackled to life. Unidentified vessel, you have entered restricted space. Power down your engines and prepare to be boarded. Rose's training kicked in. She yanked her controls hard, sending her small ship into a spiral as she tried to escape. Her vessel was faster and more maneuverable. She might still have a chance. But as she weaved through the asteroid field, two more human ships appeared, boxing her in with practiced precision. A warning shot flashed past her viewport, close enough to make her ship's shields flicker. These humans weren't just lucky. They were good. Too good. Final warning. The human voice came again. Power down, or we will be forced to take aggressive action. Rose's mind raced through her options. The Brightcrest military code was clear. Capture meant death, either by the enemy's hand or your own. She had heard stories of human brutality, how they tortured prisoners for information before disposing of them. Her hand moved toward the self-destruct sequence. But before she could enter the code, a bright blue beam struck her ship. Her controls went dead, and the emergency lights flashed as all systems shut down. An electromagnetic pulse. Another technology the humans supposedly didn't possess. Rose felt her ship being pulled in by a tractor beam. Through her viewport, she could see the massive hull of the human flagship growing larger. The name Defender was written in large letters across its dark surface. As her ship was guided into a brightly lit landing bay, she noticed something odd. The human crews working in the bay weren't wearing full battle armor as she'd expected. Some weren't even armed. Once her ship settled on the deck, Rose took a deep breath and straightened her uniform. If she was going to die, she would die with dignity. The airlock hissed as it was forced open from the outside. She expected to be roughly dragged out. Instead, a calm voice called out, "Please exit your vessel with your hands visible. No harm will come to you if you cooperate." Slowly, Rose stepped out of her ship. 6 human security officers surrounded her, their weapons pointed at the ground rather than at her. One of them, a female with dark skin, approached carefully. "I am Chief Williams," she said clearly. "You are now in protective custody aboard the UES Defender. You will be treated in accordance with international law and the Geneva Convention. Do you understand?" Rose didn't respond. This had to be some sort of trick. Everyone knew humans were savages who enjoyed inflicting pain on their prisoners. Yet these humans were acting nothing like the monsters she had been warned about. As Chief Williams carefully secured her wrists with what appeared to be surprisingly comfortable restraints, Rose caught bits of conversation between the other officers. They weren't celebrating her capture or arguing over who would get to interrogate her. Instead, they were discussing proper prisoner protocols and something called basic rights. As they led her away from her ship, Rose felt her worldview beginning to crack. Everything she had been taught about humans seemed to be wrong, and this was only the beginning. Rose sat in her cell, but cell didn't seem like the right word for this space. The room was clean, well lit, and had a proper bed with soft blankets. There was even a small window showing the stars outside. This was nothing like the dark, cold prisons her people used for human captives. 3 hours had passed since her capture, and no one had hurt her. The guards brought her water and something they called a sandwich. They even asked if she had any allergies before giving her the food. It made no sense. The door opened, and a tall human male entered. He wore a dark blue uniform with commander's insignia, but carried no weapons. His gray hair and the lines on his face suggested age and experience, yet his blue eyes held a kindness that confused Rose. "I'm Commander Jack Walker," he said, pulling up a chair and sitting across from her. "I hope you've been treated well." Rose stayed silent, remembering her military training. When captured, say nothing. Show no weakness. Expect only pain. Walker smiled gently. "You know, your silence tells me more than you think. It tells me your people have filled your head with stories about us. Bad ones, I'm guessing." He reached into his pocket, and Rose tensed, but he only pulled out a small device and placed it on the table between them. It projected a hologram of her ship's flight path. "Your flying was impressive," he said. 3 loops through that asteroid field while under fire, and not a single scratch on your ship. That takes real skill." Rose couldn't help feeling a flutter of pride, but she kept her face neutral. Walker continued, "We've been watching your people's scouting patterns for months. You're the first pilot who spotted our ship's hiding spots. If that energy spike hadn't given us away, you might have slipped past completely." This wasn't how interrogations were supposed to go. Where was the pain? The threats? The demands for information? Why? The words slipped out before Rose could stop herself. "Why what?" Walker asked. "Why are you treating me like this? I'm your enemy. We've killed thousands of your people. You should hate me." Walker leaned back in his chair, his expression thoughtful. "Did you personally kill thousands of our people?" "No, but have you ever killed anyone?" Rose hesitated. "No. I'm a scout. I gather information." "Then why should I hate you?" Walker asked simply. "You're a soldier doing your duty, just like me. The fact that our leaders are at war doesn't mean we have to abandon our humanity, or whatever the equivalent is for your people." He touched the hologram device again, and it showed images that made Rose's heart stop. Bright Crest warships firing on what was clearly a civilian colony. But the date was wrong. This attack happened 3 days before humans supposedly fired first. "This isn't possible," Rose whispered. "We're fighting because humans attacked us. Everyone knows this. History is written by those in power," Walker said quietly. "And sometimes they don't write the truth." He stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the stars. "We have something on Earth called the Geneva Convention. It's a set of rules about how to treat people during war, even our enemies, especially our enemies. Because if we torture and kill prisoners, if we become monsters, then what are we fighting for?" Rose's mind was spinning. Everything she knew about humans contradicted what she was seeing and hearing. Her people's propaganda showed humans as primitive savages, yet here they were with technology that matched or exceeded Brightcrest capabilities. They were supposed to be cruel and violent, yet they treated prisoners with respect. "I'll leave you to think," Walker said, moving toward the door. "Tomorrow, if you're willing, I'd like to show you more records of how this war really started. You don't have to believe them. Just look and decide for yourself." As the door closed behind him, Rose stared at the stars through her window. For the first time in her life, she began to question everything she had been taught to believe. And somewhere deep inside, a small voice whispered that maybe, just maybe, she had been fighting on the wrong side all along. The next morning, Rose found herself in what the humans called a conference room. The large display screen on the wall showed more records of the war's beginning. Each new piece of evidence felt like a heavy stone in her stomach. Commander Walker sat quietly beside her, letting her process the information at her own pace. The room was comfortable, with no restraints or guards, just her, the commander, and the truth she had never known. "This can't be right," Rose said, her voice shaking as she watched another video. It showed Brightcrest ships attacking the human medical transport. Our leaders said these were military vessels disguised as civilian ships. Walker touched the screen controls, bringing up more footage. "This is from our archives, the same incident, but from our side. The video showed doctors and nurses helping injured colonists onto the transport, children being carried to safety. Then came the attack. Rose felt sick. "Stop, please." Walker paused the video. "I know this is hard to watch, but you need to understand. We never wanted this war. We tried to contact your government 7 times after that first attack, asking for explanations, seeking peace talks. Each time, our messages were met with more attacks." Rose's spots, usually a calm blue color, had turned a pale gray, a sign of deep distress among her people. But why? Why would our leaders lie to us? "Power," Walker said simply. "From what we've learned, your military leadership needed a common enemy to stay in control. They chose us because we were new to space travel, still finding our way among the stars. They thought we'd be an easy target." He brought up another screen, this one showing battle statistics. "But they made a mistake. Humans have a long, sad history of warfare among ourselves. We know its cost too well. That's why we created rules for war, why we treat prisoners with respect, why we always seek peace first." He paused. "It's also why we're very, very good at defending ourselves when we have to." Rose stood up and walked to the window, her mind racing. Everything made sense now. The advanced human technology her people claimed didn't exist, the savage behavior that she had never actually witnessed, the way the humans fought defensively rather than seeking conquest. "There's more," Walker said gently. "We've intercepted communications from your home world. Not everyone among your people supports this war. There's a growing resistance movement, people who have figured out the truth." He showed her messages from Brightcrest civilians questioning the war, military officers expressing doubts, even some government officials trying to secretly reach out to humans for peace talks. All of them silenced or disappeared by the military leadership. "My brother," Rose whispered, a memory suddenly clicking into place. "He was a data analyst for the military. Last year, he sent me a message saying he had discovered something important, something that would change everything. The next day, we were told he died in an accident." She turned to Walker, her spots now pulsing with anger. "They killed him, didn't they? Because he found the truth?" Walker nodded sadly. "Most likely. I'm sorry." Rose sank back into her chair, overwhelmed. Her whole life, her entire career, had been built on lies. She had proudly served a government that murdered its own people to keep its secrets. The humans she had been taught to hate were actually showing more honor and integrity than her own leaders. "What happens now?" she asked quietly. "That depends on you," Walker replied. "We're not going to force you to do anything. You can remain here as a protected prisoner until the war ends, or you can help us stop this war, help us save lives on both sides. But that has to be your choice. We won't be like your leaders. We won't force you to pick a side." Rose looked at the frozen image on the screen, the one showing her people attacking innocent civilians. She thought of her brother, of all the lives lost to maintain a lie. Her spots slowly shifted from gray to a determined purple. "Show me more," she said firmly. "Show me everything. It's time I learned the whole truth." The attack came without warning. Rose was in the middle of reviewing more war records with Commander Walker when the first blast rocked the Defender. The ship's alarms blared as red emergency lights flashed throughout the corridors. Multiple Brightcrest warships detected. A voice announced over the ship's speakers, "All hands to battle stations." Walker jumped to his feet, but instead of rushing out, he turned to Rose. "Stay here where it's safe. Security protocols will seal this room." But Rose started to protest, but the ship shook again with another hit. "Commander Walker to bridge," his communicator crackled. "Sir, they're targeting our engines. 3 warships, heavy class. They must have followed our energy signature from the capture." Walker's face hardened, but his voice remained calm. "Begin defensive maneuvers. Protect the civilian transport ships in Sector 7. No direct attacks unless absolutely necessary." Rose watched in amazement as the human crew responded to the crisis. On the room's display screens, she could see the battle unfolding. The Defender moved with surprising grace for such a large vessel, positioning itself between the Brightcrest ships and a group of smaller vessels trying to escape the battle zone. "Those transports," Rose said, recognizing the ship type. "They're carrying refugees, aren't they?" Walker nodded, his eyes fixed on the tactical display. "Families from the outer colonies. We're evacuating them after your people's last attack." Another blast hit the Defender. The lights flickered, and Rose heard the groaning of metal under stress. A new alert sounded through the ship. "Hull breach on Deck 5. The speakers announced, "Emergency crews needed. Artificial gravity failing in sections 12 through 15. Walker's communicator came alive again. "Sir, we've lost power to the emergency force fields on Deck 5. We have crew members trapped." Rose saw the conflict on Walker's face. He needed to be on the bridge commanding the battle, but his people were in danger. Without thinking, she stepped forward. "I can help," she said. "I know Brightcrest ship patterns. I can predict where they'll attack next." Walker studied her for a moment. The security protocols meant she could safely stay locked in this room. He could leave her here and know she wouldn't escape. Instead, he made a decision that would change everything. "Come with me," he said, heading for the door. "But stay close." They ran through the corridors, passing crew members rushing to their stations. No one questioned Rose's presence at Walker's side. They reached a command station, where screens showed the damage to Deck 5. "The next hit will come from the lead ship," Rose said, pointing to the tactical display. "They always target the same section 3 times to ensure the force fields fail completely." Walker immediately acted on her information. "Bridge, adjust shield power to Deck 5. Section C, prepare for incoming fire." Seconds later, energy beams from the Brightcrest ship struck exactly where Rose had predicted. But this time, the strengthened shields held. "Engineering teams, you have a clear path to the trapped crew," Walker ordered. "Move now." Rose watched as human rescue teams rushed into the damaged sections, risking their lives to save their companions. On her own ships, damaged sections would have been sealed off, sacrificing anyone trapped inside. A massive explosion suddenly rocked the ship. One of the Brightcrest vessels had gotten too close to the Defender's defensive fire and took heavy damage. Rose saw escape pods launching from the damaged ship. "Sir," a voice reported, "we're picking up distress signals from Brightcrest escape pods." Without hesitation, Walker gave his order. "Begin rescue operations. Bring them aboard." Rose stared at him in shock. "You're saving them. They just tried to kill you." Walker turned to her, his eyes serious but kind. "Remember what I told you about staying human? This is what I meant. Every life matters, Rose, even our enemies." As she watched the human crews organize rescue operations for the very people who had been attacking them moments before, Rose felt something deep inside her change. She had been taught that humans were savages, but here they were, showing more compassion than her own people ever had. The battle wasn't over, but Rose had already chosen her side. 3 days after the attack, Rose sat in Commander Walker's office, watching a transmission from Human High Command. The stern-faced admiral on the screen made her spots turn a nervous yellow. "Commander Walker, your actions in protecting the refugee ships were commendable," the admiral said. "However, we have a new situation. The Brightcrest leadership has reached out to us." Walker leaned forward in his chair. "They want to negotiate." "Not exactly." The admiral's expression darkened. "They're demanding we return Lieutenant Rose to them. In exchange, they claim they'll release 50 human prisoners." Rose felt her heart stop. 50 lives. Her people were offering 50 human lives in exchange for her, but something didn't feel right about this offer. "What's your analysis of this offer, Lieutenant Rose?" Walker asked, surprising both Rose and the admiral by including her in the discussion. Rose thought carefully before speaking. "It's a trap," she said finally. "The Brightcrest military doesn't negotiate for prisoners. If they want me back this badly—" She paused, her spots shifting to a darker shade. "They want to make an example of me, to show what happens to those who help humans." The admiral nodded slowly. "We came to the same conclusion. Our intelligence suggests they're particularly interested in silencing you because of what you've learned about the war's true origins. Commander Walker, the Admiral continued, High Command's official position is that this decision is yours to make. You're closest to the situation. After the Admiral's transmission ended, a heavy silence filled the office. Rose looked out the window at the stars, thinking about everything that had happened since her capture. You should make the trade, she said quietly. Walker turned to her, surprised. Why would you say that? 50 lives. Commander, 50 of your people could go free. I'm just one person. Walker stood up and walked to a shelf, picking up an old book. Do you know what this is? When Rose shook her head, he continued. It's called the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. It's very old, written after one of our worst wars. It says that every person has basic rights that can't be traded away or violated, no matter what. He placed the book on his desk. If we hand you over to be executed just because it's convenient, we betray everything we believe in. Those 50 prisoners wouldn't want freedom at that price. It would make us no better than your leaders who sacrifice their people for political gain. Rose felt tears forming in her eyes. Among her people, showing such emotion was considered weak. But here, with Walker, she didn't feel the need to hide it. But I have another choice to offer you, Walker said. We've been contacted by members of the Bright Crest Resistance, the same group your brother was working with before he died. They want to help expose the truth about the war. He touched a control panel, bringing up a series of encoded messages. They need someone brave enough to speak out. Someone with direct military experience who has seen both sides. Someone like you. Rose's spots pulsed with surprise. You want me to publicly oppose my own government? That would be considered the highest treason. Yes, Walker said simply. It would also be the highest courage. But it has to be your choice. We'll protect you either way. Rose stood and walked to the window. Below, she could see repair crews working on the Defender's hull, humans, and rescued Brightcrest crew members working together. Her people's propaganda had been so wrong about humans. They weren't primitive or savage. They were something far more dangerous to her government. They were good. She thought about her brother, about the truth he died trying to reveal, about the families on both sides suffering because of lies, about Commander Walker, who offered mercy instead of revenge. Her spots shifted to a deep, determined blue as she turned back to Walker. I'll do it, she said firmly. Not for humans or for the Brightcrest, but for the truth. And for my brother. Walker smiled warmly. Welcome to the right side of history, Lieutenant Rose. Just Rose, she corrected him. I'm not a Brightcrest lieutenant anymore. I'm something else now. Something better. Rose sat in front of the recording equipment in the Defender's communication room, her spots shifting between nervous gray and determined blue. The human technicians made final adjustments to ensure her message would reach as many Brightcrest communication channels as possible. Commander Walker stood nearby, offering silent support. Remember, he said gently, just speak from your heart. Tell them what you've seen. Rose nodded, taking a deep breath. The red recording light came on, and she began to speak. My name is Rose, former lieutenant of the Brightcrest Scout Division. She started, her voice growing stronger with each word. Everything you know about this war is a lie. Everything you've been told about humans is false. She held up the data tablet showing the true records of the war's beginning. I've seen the proof. Our military leaders attacked human colonies first. They murdered innocent people, men, women, and children, to start a war they thought they could easily win. Her spots pulsed with emotion as she continued. You've been told humans are savages who torture prisoners. I am living proof that this is a lie. When they captured me, they showed mercy. They treated me with respect. They showed me the truth. Rose played the footage of Brightcrest ships attacking the medical transport. Look at this. Really look. These aren't military vessels. These are doctors trying to save lives. Lives our leaders chose to end. Her voice cracked slightly as she spoke about her brother. Many of our own people have discovered this truth. My brother was one of them. He tried to expose these lies, and our leaders killed him for it. How many more of our family members have disappeared for asking questions? She described the recent battle, how the humans risked their own lives to save Brightcrest crews from damaged ships. While our leaders teach us to abandon our wounded, these primitives rescue their enemies. They value all life, even those who moments before tried to kill them. As she spoke, more and more Brightcrest communication channels began picking up her broadcast. The technicians signaled that resistance members were helping to spread the message across multiple systems. To my fellow soldiers, Rose continued, her spots now a brilliant purple of conviction. Look around you. Look at what we're really doing. We're not defending our people. We're not fighting for honor. We're helping corrupt leaders maintain their power through fear and lies. She stood up, moving closer to the camera. I know what some of you are thinking. That I'm a traitor. That I've been brainwashed. So I challenge you. Ask questions. Look for proof. The humans aren't hiding anything. They're willing to share all their records, all their evidence. What are our leaders hiding? Reports started coming in. The broadcast was reaching civilian populations across Brightcrest's space. People were recording and sharing it despite military attempts to block the transmission. To those who already doubt, to those who've lost loved ones to these lies, you're not alone. There are more of us than they want you to know. The humans will help us. They'll help us end this war and build a real peace. Rose's spots glowed with an intensity she'd never felt before. I choose truth over lies, life over death, peace over war. And I'm not the only one. Join us. Help us end this war before we lose anyone else to these lies. She ended the transmission by sharing coded frequencies that resistance members could use to contact human forces safely. As the recording light went off, Rose collapsed back into her chair, emotionally drained. Walker put a supportive hand on her shoulder. You did well. Very well. The communication room burst into activity as responses started pouring in. Other Brightcrest prisoners were asking to record their own messages. Resistance cells were reporting increased recruitment. Civilian protests were beginning on several Brightcrest worlds. It's starting, isn't it? Rose asked, watching the incoming reports. Walker nodded. Change always starts with one person brave enough to speak the truth. Your brother would be proud. Rose's spots shifted to a color of hope, a soft golden glow she hadn't shown since childhood. The truth was out now, and nothing could stop its spread. She had taken the hardest step, and others were already following. The war wasn't over, but its foundation of lies was beginning to crumble. 1 month after Rose's broadcast, the Defenders' observation deck was filled with both humans and Brightcrest. They gathered around the large view screen, watching as history unfolded before them. On the screen, massive protests filled the streets of major Brightcrest cities. Citizens held signs demanding peace, their spots glowing with colors of hope and determination. Military ships were standing down, refusing orders to fire on human vessels. The lies that had started the war were crumbling faster than anyone had expected. Rose stood beside Commander Walker, her spots shimmering with a mix of emotions as they watched the Brightcrest High Council chamber. The military leaders who had orchestrated the war were being led away in restraints, their own people demanding justice for years of deception. I never thought I'd see this day, Rose said softly. When I made that broadcast, I hoped to save a few lives. I never imagined. Walker smiled. Truth is like a light in darkness. Once it starts shining, it spreads on its own. The screen shifted to show a new image, the first official peace conference between humans and Brightcrest. Representatives from both species sat together, not as enemies, but as people working to build a better future. Among them were former prisoners from both sides, resistance members, and military officers who had chosen truth over orders. Commander Walker, a young human officer, called out, rushing into the observation deck. The final numbers just came in. Over 70% of Brightcrest military forces have declared support for the new provisional government. The war is officially over. Cheers erupted throughout the deck. Humans and Brightcrest embraced each other, their previous hatred forgotten in the joy of peace. Rose watched as former enemies celebrated together, their differences forgotten in the shared relief of ending the conflict. "There's something else," the officer added, handing Walker a datapad. "The new Brightcrest government is creating a joint peacekeeping force. They're requesting that the Defender and her crew serve as its flagship." And he looked at Rose, smiling. "They specifically requested you as their liaison officer." Rose's spots flashed with surprise. "Me? But I was just a scout." "You were the first," Walker corrected her. "The first to question, the first to speak out, the first to show that our peoples could work together. Sometimes that's all it takes to change everything." The view screen showed more images from across both human and Brightcrest space. Joint relief efforts helping war-damaged colonies, mixed crews working together on reconstruction projects, children from both species playing together in newly established peace zones. "Look there," Walker pointed to a particular image. Rose's spots glowed with emotion as she recognized the location. A memorial being built on her home world. On it were inscribed the names of all those who had died trying to expose the truth, including her brothers. "He didn't die for nothing," Walker said gently. "His courage lived on in you, and through you, it changed both our worlds." Rose touched the screen where her brother's name was displayed. "I wish he could see this." "He can," came a voice behind them. An elderly Brightcrest woman stepped forward, her spots showing the soft colors of wisdom and peace. Through all of this, she gestured to the scenes of cooperation and healing playing across the screen. This is what he dreamed of. As the celebration continued around them, Rose and Walker moved to the window, looking out at the stars. A fleet of mixed human and Brightcrest ships floated nearby, their weapons sealed in a gesture of trust. "What happens now?" Rose asked. "Now comes the hard part," Walker replied. "Building trust, healing wounds, learning to live together. But we'll do it the same way we ended the war. One person at a time, one truth at a time, one act of kindness at a time." Rose's spots settled into a deep, contented blue. She thought about her journey, from enemy scout to prisoner to something she had never expected, a bridge between two peoples. Her people had been wrong about humans. They weren't primitive or savage. They were something far more powerful. They were capable of forgiveness, of mercy, of changing minds not through force but through kindness. And that, she now understood, was the greatest strength of all.